and we've got this rather exciting story from near the end of the book of Acts. And it's unusual in the sense that it's just a description of a journey. There's no teaching as such, it's just a description, and it's a very vivid description. And in fact, people say it's one of the best descriptions of what the sailing was like in the ancient days, in the ancient times, before sat-navs and global navigation systems, and even sextants and all the rest of it. What life was like sailing, which we take for granted nowadays, we get a ferry, but nowadays, then it was completely different. So, I'd just like to give you a bit of context first, and let's see how this works. Oh, it does. Just leading up to the journey. Why are they on this journey in the first place? Several chapters ago, Paul was in Jerusalem, in the temple, and some very strict Jews there thought he brought some people who weren't Jews into the temple, which was illegal. So they kicked up a fuss, and they were about to have him flogged when he said, "You always fought Roman citizens." "Oh, Roman citizen, you just played the Joker card, we can't do this." So they called a meeting of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leaders, which ended in a big argument, and also in the threat of assassination attempt of Paul. So Paul was taken into custody away from Jerusalem down to the coast in Caesarea. And he stays there for 2 years, during which time he gets interviewed by 2 governors, Felix and Festus, and also by a king called Agrippa. It doesn't sound very nice, isn't it? And he had this wonderful opportunity to explain why he's a Christian and how he became a Christian. But he realizes that the Jews want to get him. So he appeals, as is his right, to Caesar. "I'm a Roman citizen, I appeal to Caesar." So they say, "Okay, you've appealed to Caesar, Therefore, he has to go to Rome." So, hopefully, those of you in the cheap seats can still see this map of what happens. Over here, bottom right, you could just make out Jerusalem. And there on the coast is Caesarea, where the journey starts from. In those days, you didn't normally sail at that time of year. We reckon that this was the year AD 59. And we know roughly when it was because Paul talks another bit of the same chapter about the fast, the Day of Atonement, which we can date it out because it's based on the phases of the moon. And we know that happened on October the 5th that year. So it's happening in October, end of the sailing season. So you'll hug the coast rather than sailing straight across. So they head off from Caesarea bottom right up to Sidon in modern-day Lebanon. Stay there for a few days, and Paul is able to greet some Christians who are there. And off they set sail again, round Cyprus, hugging the coast to protect them from the prevailing winds, because the ships there couldn't really tack against the wind. It was very dangerous and very difficult, and caused all kinds of upset, until they ended in what we would now call Turkey, in Myra. The ship they were on isn't going in the right direction, so they swap ships in Myra. And they get on another ship, go further up to the coast, you can see there's Cnidus, and then they set off. They have a rough time with it, and eventually they end up in Crete, there in the middle of their havens, just there. Paul, who's probably the most experienced sailor of them all, he's been around this part of history 3 times, says we should winter here in what we now know as Crete. We should winter here in Crete. The owner and the captain of the ship, 2 different people, think, yes we do, but we ought to move up the coast to another place called Phoenix, which is a better harbour for us to winter over because of the prevailing winds. Paul says it'd be better off staying here. Okay? But they go. They set off. They set off with the lovely weather. You know the feeling, do you? And then suddenly, the weather turns. the wind springs up and blows them out. And for the next 2 weeks, they don't know where they are. Because of the storms, they can't see the sun or the stars, they can't take a reading, they have no idea. The cruise isn't going very well. The buffet, all being tipped over. The silver service has been cancelled because it's pretty rough. And for 2 weeks, they struggled. They lightened the load by getting rid of all kinds of grain that they were carrying. It was a grain ship coming from Alexandria down at the bottom of Egypt up to Rome. And they are really struggling. They think they are going to die. Very exciting description until finally they end up in the island what they discovered to be Malta. And that's where this chapter finishes, and the final chapter of Acts takes us from Malta up to Rome. It's a very vivid description. I've just finished reading a book actually by Ernest Shackleton, who was an explorer in the Antarctic. And he is famous for a journey he did, because their ship was trapped in ice, and then they had to get off the ice, and they stayed on the ice for several months, and then they got to some land, and then just 6 of them got in a small boat the length of the pew, and they sailed 800 miles heading for an island called South Georgia. And they did it, and took them several weeks to do it, and then when they got to South Georgia, they had to climb up all kinds of mountains. Wonderful journey, and it's very similar to this one, all the things that they had to go through. Now, this story about having a rough time sailing in the Bible might remind you of a couple of other stories. It might remind you, for example, of Jonah. Of course, if you remember, a very similar story in the sense that when a storm struck up, they need to lighten the boat. And they eventually threw Jonah overboard because they were superstitious. And if you remember, they drew lots to try to find out why is the storm against us. And the lot fell upon Jonah. He gets thrown over. Nothing like that in this story. They just accept the fact of the bad weather. They don't dispute it's due to anything other than meteorological conditions. And the only things they throw over are the grain and some of the heavier machinery to try to lighten the boat to help them escape. The other story in the Bible involving storms, Jesus on the Sea of Galilee, where the storm springs up, the disciples, seasoned fishermen, are scared out of their minds, and they waken Jesus because he's asleep. Master, do you not care that we are perishing? We're about to die. If you remember, Jesus stands up and says, "Peace, be still." And immediately, everything is calm. And they say, "Who is this?" And even the wind and the waves obey him. In this story with Paul, there is no account of anybody praying for a miracle. There might have been, but there is no account of it. There is no divine intervention of suddenly the storm finishing and the sun comes out and everything's wonderful. And perhaps Paul had in mind the story of Jesus calming the storm, but Jesus didn't calm this storm. So, in this journey of Paul, I'd like to look at it very briefly under 2 headings, which we'll do sort of simultaneously, because we're all, if you like, in the same boat. Okay, first one is the journey of faith. All of us are on a journey of faith. Some of us have been on it for a long time and got nowhere. Some of us have been on it not very long and seem to be making good progress. But we are all exploring, learning more about God revealed in the person of Jesus, experienced by us by the Holy Spirit, and trying to live it out in the world here and now. And we're all on that journey, no matter how old or how young you are. But secondly, we're also going on the journey of life, aren't we? It's not only people that on Strictly Come Dancing who say it's on a journey, but we're all on a journey through life. There's from this story of Paul's journey that we might find helpful. Let's see. First of all, may I suggest the importance of good companions. We didn't read the very first verse of chapter 22, but it says, "We set sail." It's part of what's called the we diaries in the book of Acts. Sometimes it's in the third person, sometimes it's in the first person. And this is in the first person. We set sail, not they set sail. Because he was accompanied by Luke, who wrote the book of Acts. And also, if you read verse 2 of chapter 27, it said they were also accompanied by a man called Aristarchus, who is mentioned several times in other books of the New Testament. So Paul had two Christian companions with him during this journey. That immediately begs the question: the need for good companions on our journey of faith. Our faith is personal and individual, but it is never alone. We journey together. In the song we were singing about, Jesus makes us a part of a family. In our journey of faith, who are you traveling? Who are your companions in the journey of faith? Are you part of a small group to help us in our Christian faith, talking about it, praying together, sharing? I find this difficult about the Christian faith. I don't understand that about the Christian faith. I'm really enjoying this about it, whatever it might be. I hope you are part of the group. It's especially true of young people. Because the pressure of young people today is so difficult to maintain being a Christian, you need the help of Christians of your own age. That is the most important thing, I would say. But also, during the journey of life, likewise we have companions. Your people at work, who do you work with? Your family. Some of them you've chosen, some of them you haven't. And we have to journey through our life with our companions. Halfway through the story, Paul encourages them to eat. And it's a very interesting phrase that is used by the description of Paul taking the bread. He says, he took some bread, gave thanks to God, and then he broke it. Do you recognize any phrases there from the institution of the Last Supper by Jesus, who took bread, gave thanks, and broke? Now, I'm sure this was an ordinary meal, but it is also perhaps an indication of the importance of eating together. Whether it's celebrating the Holy Communion like we do now to help us in our journey, but also of eating together, of practicing hospitality, of sharing our lives together, because we all need each other in the journey of faith and through. A journey with a purpose. Paul's journey wasn't just a random, let's go for a cruise around the Med. It had a specific purpose from quite a while ago. Back in chapter 19, verse 21, he had decided he must visit Rome. Rome was the centre of the Roman Empire. He had never been there before. He had written to a church called the Romans, but he himself had never visited. Paul has a visit from the angel. Take courage, for as you have testified me about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify me about me in Rome. He knew it was God's will for him to go to Rome. He wanted to go to Rome. God wanted him to go to Rome. His journey had a purpose. And because of this, he was able to say to those people who were struggling, there were 200 and something people on board, who were scared out of their wits by this awful stuff that was happening, I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me. Purpose is so important in any journey. If there is no clear purpose, We'll be tempted to give up. A simple example, if you're going on a walk and it suddenly turns quite nasty, do we turn back? Why are we doing this? Is it for enjoyment? Oh no, we're going because we need to see this viewpoint or get to the top or whatever it is. The purpose decides how you cope with your journey. Likewise, in the Christian faith, we have a purpose of our faith. The purpose of Christian faith is not to get you to heaven. That's a byproduct. It's not the purpose. It's not, oh, I've got my ticket, I've got my reserved seat, I'm okay. That's it. I can relax now. The purpose of the Christian life is to help bring about the kingdom of God. A byproduct of that is that we continue to see the Father of the kingdom after death. But here and now, it's to enjoy and to bring about the kingdom of God, the rule and reign of God in our lives and in society. And that is the purpose of our Christian faith. Likewise, what is the purpose of our living? In our journey of life. We get a job, we get a mortgage, we get a house, we get children. But what's the point and purpose of it all? I was reading an article from the Times, or in the Times because I can't afford it, but it was taken from the Times, and it talked about the effect of Dawkins, Richard Dawkins, who was a very famous atheist. And he said the effect of this is to reduce the number of people who believe in God. But what has happened? Does faith and rationality, science and rationality suddenly develop? No. People believe anything instead. And they're all over the place. And people have no longer any overarching purpose to their life. And that is the good news about being a Christian. It's a purpose to our life as well. So, thirdly and finally, the journey, as you can see, wasn't easy. Just look at some of the phrases that are used in this journey. The winds were against us. We were making slow headway. We had difficulty. The wind did not allow us. Much time had been lost. It had become dangerous. We took a violent battering. We gave up all hope of being saved. That was the description of Paul's journey. Is it a description of ours? You cannot be living very long in our journey of life, or a Christian very long in our journey of faith, if you haven't realized there are all kinds of difficulties and dangers in the Christian faith. It is not easy, which is why we need good companions. So how do we cope with all these difficulties and problems in the Christian life? Paul, elsewhere, writing to Timothy, uses the analogy of shipwreck and says, some have shipwrecked their faith because of the wind was against them and the reefs and all the rest of it. And we all know people, don't we, who used to believe, who used to be part of the people of God meeting together, but are no longer. And perhaps their faith has been shipwrecked, abandoned ship, for whatever reason. And I'm sure you and I have been tempted to do the same. Because it is not easy. And one of the ways of facing up to the difficulties is first of all realizing that they're there and not pretending that we don't have any. Or pretending once you become a Christian all your problems will be solved. Everything will be fine. Clearly that is not. So, a quote here from Viktor Frankl, who was someone who was in the Holocaust, who survived the Holocaust in Auschwitz, and he says this in his book: those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. I think that is so important as we journey through our faith and journey through life, that we have a sense of God having a purpose for us Just like Paul believed he needed to go to Jerusalem, so we believe God has a purpose in our life to help us through our journey of faith and our journey of life. Because Paul then says at the end of the reading, in this way, everyone reached land safely. It was touch and go. They were beached. The waves were crashing into the ship on its stern, so they had to abandon ship. Those who could swam for it, those who couldn't clung on to bits of the wreckage and were washed ashore. All 276 people. Everyone. So, John Newton, who himself was shipwrecked and was a great captain of a slave ship, unfortunately, plying the trade on the west coast of Africa for many years, was able to write this about through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. That was quite literally true for him. And it is grace that has brought me safe this far. Grace. And so I'd like to finish with this quotation from a medieval lady who was a nun called Mother Julian. And she says this: she has a vision of Jesus, and she has meditations on this Jesus over many years. She writes them all down, become very famous. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. For there is a force of love moving through the universe that holds us fast and will never let us go. The Christian message is, quite literally, the best is yet to be. Many of us look back and think there's more behind us than there is in front of us. And what was behind us was nicer than what's in front of us. But the Christian message is that all shall be well. All shall be well. We might not feel that because at the moment we're going through all kinds of storms and rough times. We might find that difficult, which is why we need friends, support us, and help us. But the Christian faith belief is that Jesus is Lord, and all things